Today's big question: why do we say goodbye? And what does it mean? Or, as some may ask, where did the word goodbye come from? That's what we're looking at today. You'd think that such a common and simple phrase would have an equally straightforward explanation. But, as it turns out, that's not the case. But, if you stick with me to the end, I will reveal all. First off, let's look at the word itself. At first glance, it seems pretty self-explanatory. You say goodbye when you're saying goodbye, which is when you part ways with someone. After all, the good in goodbye clearly refers to good, and the bye part obviously means bye, right? Well, not quite. In fact, those two words don't actually come together to make sense in the English language. There is no definition of goodbye in any dictionary. Let me show you. If I open up the Oxford English Dictionary and type in goodbye, nothing comes up. If I take the B out of bye, the definition of bye as in bye comes up, but not goodbye. If I type in good, nothing really comes up other than a bunch of definitions for good. So what gives? Well, it turns out that goodbye is just one word. And that's why it doesn't break down into smaller words like good and bye. Let me demonstrate. Here's the word airplane. It's one word, and it's made up of the words air and plane. We can even pronounce the individual words within it. When we spell it out, we get airplane. When we pronounce it, we get airplane. That's because airplane is a compound word, which means it's made up of two or more separate words that combine to create a new meaning. Now, here's the word goodbye. Just like airplane, goodbye is also one word, which is why it's written as goodbye, rather than goodbye. And this also means that we can't pronounce it as goodbye, because it's not made up of those two words. Now that we've established that goodbye is one word, let's take a closer look at where it came from. Where did this word originate? To answer that question, we need to travel back in time to the Middle Ages. In medieval England, people used to say, "God be with you," when they were parting ways with someone. This was a religious blessing, and it meant that they wished for God to be with the person and protect them on their journey. Over time, this phrase started to be shortened. People started to use contractions like Godbye or Godbye, and these were used instead of the longer original phrase. The use of these contractions likely started to happen sometime around the 16th century. But wait a minute. Why would people start contracting the phrase? Wasn't it important to say the whole thing? No one contracts "thank you" to "thank you." Why would they do it with this phrase, but not with others? Well, keep in mind that these were different times. Back then, people didn't really keep in touch with each other, unless they were close friends or family members. Most people wouldn't see the same people on a regular basis, so there wasn't really a need to keep the tradition of the full phrase alive. Plus, it was probably easier to say the shorter versions of the phrase. Anyway, the shortening continued over the years until the phrase became something entirely new. A completely different word, which evolved into the word goodbye today. And this evolution is pretty remarkable. Here's a brief timeline of how the phrase transformed. In the late 14th century, people would say, "God be with thee," according to the online etymology dictionary. Around the 16th century, that started to contract into forms like Godwye. Notes M. By the 17th century, it evolved into goodbye, or God by your, as recorded by the English clergyman John Perses. Then, around the 18th century, the variant Godbye became popular. But by the 19th century, the spelling goodbye had become standard. Now, I know what you're thinking. Why would it take hundreds of years for something to go from God be with thee to goodbye? Can't we just fast forward a bit? Well, that makes sense if you live in a culture like ours today, where things change quickly. But back then, people weren't as quick to change the way they spoke. Also, people didn't really document their language like we do today. So it's hard to tell exactly how the phrase changed over time. With that said, I think it's safe to say that the phrase went through several stages of evolution before becoming the word we know today, and it's interesting to see how something that started out as a religious blessing turned into a common parting phrase. And here's another interesting point. Why do we wish someone a good something when we're saying goodbye? Shouldn't it be bad something? After all, we're parting ways. Isn't it bad? Well, the reason we say good instead of bad is because when we say goodbye, we're wishing for everything to be good between the people who are parting ways. We want them to continue to be good friends, for example, or for their journey to be safe and sound. Saying goodbye isn't about the present moment, but about the future. It's a way of expressing hope for the future. And now we come to the final question: what does goodbye mean? Since it's just one word, it doesn't have a definition in the dictionary. As I said earlier, it's just a word that's used as a parting phrase. But I think there's a deeper meaning behind it, too. When you say goodbye to someone, you're essentially wishing them well. You're letting them know that you hope everything will be good for them going forward. That's why you typically say it when you're parting ways with someone. You don't usually say it when you're greeting someone, unless you're being sarcastic. And that's the story of how a religious phrase turned into a common parting word. Do you have a favorite theory about where this phrase came from? Or do you have a funny story about using the word goodbye? Please share in the comments below. One final note: if you're enjoying this series and would like to support it, please consider supporting the channel. As always, thanks for watching. Until next time.